Awesome. Well, man, I am super excited to be here today. We have a really cool guest, and we met at Health
Yeah,
in Vegas. Friend of Susie's, friend of mine. Chris is here. Chris, you want to quickly introduce yourself real quick before
sure.
we
Thanks,
get
Mike.
going?
Sure. I'm Chris Brereton. I am currently a fractional chief product officer. So what that means is I work with business leaders to craft product strategies, build teams, build processes, and ensure that they can execute on their vision. I'm also acting as an investor with a fund out of London called Mohara that invests both capital and product design and engineering services in early stage companies. And I primarily focus on industries that are intertwined with the health of people and the planet, which is why I think you and I immediately hit it off. So that looks like health tech, climate tech, and digital infrastructure. So yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, I'm excited for many ways. I have a little nephew that's working right now at a Bitcoin mining company. I know you were supposed to ask me what the name of the company is, but next time we'll say the name of the company. But anyway,
when they pay for an ad on your podcast.
yeah, exactly. I love that. That is awesome. That is awesome. So, I mean, we can go to so many places here today as we start.
Totally.
And, I love where we're going with digital infrastructure, healthcare, and climate tech because there's so many big topics. How are they connected? And why don't we start with this digital infrastructure as the backbone of innovation? Is that a good spot, or am I off on a curveball?
No, I think that's a great spot. I think often when you think of healthcare, climate tech, digital infrastructure, those things sound like different things, but I think they're actually like wildly connected. I think of first and foremost digital infrastructure as sort of the like connective tissue or backbone of innovation in both of those spaces. So think like cloud computing, AI, blockchain, crypto, all that stuff makes it possible to scale software solutions or technology solutions in each of those markets. The really obvious example, I think, when we're talking about healthcare and spending time at health was the rise of telehealth during the pandemic. Without the technical infrastructure and the rails that were in place, that would have never happened for us in that moment. So digital infrastructure is that like really unsexy stuff that sits behind the scenes that makes video happen in real time with zero or near zero latency so that we can have doctor visits in rural places, for example. The other things I think that make both these sectors like wildly similar is just enormous complexity. So think things like compliance, regulatory, large scale operational challenges, read that as people problems. They also like heavily rely on real-time data or telemetry to make decisions. So in healthcare, that might look like predictive analytics to help providers look at real things in real time, like maybe someone's glucose levels to determine care pathways. In climate tech, it's going to look like telemetry on hardware to do predictive maintenance to keep renewable energy online, for example. So it's that like real-time informatics that's changing hands over this digital infrastructure that allows us to make real-time decisions or supportive decisions for other people or for infrastructure that make these things work. So they're really, really similar.
What do you think is the biggest thing holding back us from accelerating with climate, with the tech, the infrastructure? I know I hear about the grid. It seems like that's a mess. Trying the little that I'm doing with my family's project, solar project, my gosh, the PJM here on the 11 states. But anyway, what are your thoughts? I know I'm kind of going off right now, but what do you think is the biggest, most important thing to getting this accelerating it?
I think there's a couple things. I think the grid is, if not the oldest machine, one of the oldest machines we built in the country that's still operating. And what that means is there's a lot of the infrastructure that needs an overhaul. Transmission delivery seems to be one of those bottlenecks. So when you think of T&D, what I'm talking about is the pipes and wires that lead to your home or the buildings that you're in that bring the power from the substation to your light switch, let's call it. Those wires that you see on the side of the roads and leading into those substations are really old and were built with some capital expenditure at the time that we've been paying as what the industry likes to refer to us as ratepayers for. However, we need to overhaul that stuff so that we can get more power through the same infrastructure. The wires are old. They don't transmit electricity at the rates that they could with the new technologies that exist today. But all of that new technology and new wiring that needs to be done is going to come at a significant investment in each of the different markets that need to do this, or utilities or grids that need to do this, which is all going to get passed downstream to us as the ratepayers. So that's a big bottleneck for getting more renewables or just energy online and transmitted to the load required to, or the load that needs it, I guess I should say. The other is just the mix of energy on any given grid. So we have a lot of renewable sources. I think wind and solar has finally surpassed the dirty sources as a sort of new construction coming online. Nuclear needs to be one of those things. And I think there's a lot of political tension and also fear around nuclear that's holding us back from making those investments. But the mix of energy needs to be supportive of the demand on the load side. And when you have intermittent sources like solar and wind that only produce when the sun is shining or when wind is firing, we need to offload that to offload the downside of that, I guess, or the lack of production is what I'm trying to get at, to things like nuclear to stay clean instead of coal or other dirty sources. So there's,
and what, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so to wrap that all up, I think there's transmission and delivery challenges with getting enough energy to the loads that are looking for it. And then there's the balance of the types of clean energy that we're producing at any given time that we need to make sure we have investments going into.
And what about storage? It seems like storage is a huge opportunity to store it, right?
Yeah, I think batteries are one of those magic pills that we're all looking for, and we're getting closer and closer to how batteries can support the demand side needs of when power is being consumed. So, if we have these intermittent sources like wind and solar, if we can fill up a bunch of batteries when that energy is clean and abundant and nearly low cost or no cost to produce, then when those things go away, we can hit the batteries first before we turn on next loads like nuclear or dirty sources like coal. The cost of those things is still quite large, and so we're not seeing the proliferation. I think we will as the costs come down over time. But battery definitely is a big part of clean energy transition for everybody.
And, one of the things that I was fascinated as I was starting to get involved with this project, trying to do the solar farm project with our family farm, is I didn't know it until doing that, is it's really a bunch of debits and credits. I mean, really, when you think about it, no one knows where your power comes from. I mean,
Yeah.
the way it was described. I mean, so I guess that's a good thing and a bad thing. If you really could betterly decentralize with a certain checks and balances, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's definitely a relationship to the location of the energy versus the consumption of the energy, because there's loss when we transmit from one place to another. But I think on the consumer side of things, like, you don't think about kilowatt hours or megawatts when you turn on your light switch, and you sure don't want to think about your bill increasing as you turn on your light switch. Could you imagine if you had a little meter showing you how much money you were spending as you left your light on? Like, no one wants to perceive it that way. But there is a world where things like blockchain and cryptocurrency can help sort of put some guardrails around what I think you're getting at, which is like renewable energy credits or these derivative markets that we can trade certificates on. And there is some really great activity in that space and has been for years. However, there's a lot of fraud or lack of trust in the way those things are done today. And I think there's a lot of opportunity where blockchain can offer like a decentralized, secure system that enables us to understand the asset we're trading, to understand where that energy was originated, how that energy was consumed, and also then track how companies can take credit for their own sort of clean relationship to energy and how they're producing quality energy for the rest of the world.
Is there anything, are there some, I guess what your company's doing, is there better transparency or systems that you're starting to see in place with some startups and different cooperatives or whatever to do some of these exchanges?
There's so much activity in the like, how do we use blockchain and cryptocurrency for tracking this market? And there frankly have been for many, many years, at least the last, like, I don't know, I'll call it 7 or so years that I've been connected to the space. I've seen probably 100 different companies trying to do this. We are not doing any of those types of projects at one of my clients, Marathon Digital Holdings, one of the largest utility scale, if not the largest utility scale Bitcoin mining company in the world. We are incentivized in a different way to drive the adoption of clean energy, which is inherently part of the Bitcoin model. So the closer we can get to the source of energy and the source of clean energy and reduce our costs of energy consumption by having cleaner and cleaner sources, or even better, wasted sources of energy, that means we can incentivize the production of that energy in order to produce the currency or the trading asset that we are creating out of that energy. So there's an inherent relationship in our business model to help incentivize the production of clean energy and then consume that clean energy when something else can't. So that's how we really play a part in the clean energy transition at Marathon.
So what would that look like, that you would have at the substation, right at the solar whatever farm, a certain Bitcoin mining, like little mining places right where there's power? I mean, is that?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So an example of something that I'm really proud that we're doing is at some of the oil flare gas sites in Texas, they're essentially just burn off wasted production, and that creates methane produced into our atmosphere. And so what we've done is we've co-located like micro mines, so small implementations of Bitcoin miners next to these flare gas sites, and we consume the wasted energy that would otherwise just be burned off, and we convert that energy into Bitcoin through the mining process. So then there's an asset that can be traded and monetized that can be shared with the infrastructure, the energy company that's helping us, which is essentially turning trash into gold, is a fun way to think about it.
I like that. I like that. So what are some of the challenges with this blockchain cryptocurrency fit? Like the good things about this and the challenges. What would you say would be the best way to help people understand that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so new. I often refer to the crypto and sort of blockchain world as like very cowboy. There's a lot of like figuring it out as the industry is going. There's definitely some more professional players than others these days, but there's definitely a lot of, let's call them speculators out there. There's also no ignoring the energy consumption issue with blockchain, at least with Bitcoin specifically, in the way the Bitcoin blockchain works. The challenge there is like these machines run hot. They need energy to produce Bitcoin, and that's really what the conversion is that we're creating, is energy becomes currency. But the challenge there is now, how do I find renewable sources? How do I find them cheaper? How do I find waste sources to help balance my energy costs across the stack of energy consumption? And how do I do that in a world where the interconnection queues for our grids are completely stacked up with all these other sources of load that need the same energy? So you've probably heard a tremendous amount about AI and data centers consuming massive amounts of energy, and the drive for increased load from those sources. So we're actively competing for that same energy source because it's a finite resource that we can't get more of, at least in today's market, with transmission and delivery and grid interconnection queues and all the competition. So there's a lot of challenge from that front. Then there's the consumer adoption perspective. Bitcoin, or any cryptocurrency and blockchain in general, still seems very, very new to most people. Feels like fool's gold or maybe fake in a lot of circles that I run in. People just don't understand it yet. And so I think we're years away from like a mass market consumer understanding, but I think this new political climate that we're about to enter may help us cross the chasm a little bit more, at least.
Who would have ever thought that like a Republican candidate would support something so I don't know, so cool? I mean, it's such we live in a weird world, I think.
We sure do, man. I'll leave it there.
yeah. We'll leave it at that. So this is definitely an independent station. We're not holding anyone, but anyway, it just seems like this is definitely, we're getting a lot of signal. Obviously, I'm not making anything up, but the marketplace with things with crypto, it will break 100,000. It's just a question of when, right?
I think so, and I think it's going to keep climbing, especially if we enter the whole, U.S. Treasury Reserve of Bitcoin specifically. Like that is going to be a monumental shift in the understanding of what this can do. And if the U.S. does that, I can only imagine the follow-on or knock-on effects for other countries that will then have to also have a reserve. And if that's true, then there's going to be a huge ramp in front of us.
Tell me about that. Is a legislative thing going on? To explain a little more on that one.
I'm probably not the best expert here, but what I can speak to is Trump's administration is considering having a large reserve of Bitcoin, just like we do with gold, as a reserve asset to anchor our currency. And if that's the case, that means the government needs to buy a lot of Bitcoin to have that strategic reserve, and they need to put a lot of tooling and technology in place to manage and preserve that reserve. If that's the case, and that's something that is anchoring the value of our currency, then a lot of other countries who depend on the value of our currency will have to follow suit, which will drive more production and ownership of the asset.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about because there's huge macro systems in place. Isn't there another thing in 2025? Like, for instance, you got 1 through 5, the top being first close. The second is your company, right? The holder of Bitcoin assets, right? So you have number 1 is, gosh, man, volatile as ever. But now I'm having a moment. What's the first company that's going up?
I think you're probably referring to Michael Saylor's company, MicroStrategy.
Yeah, MicroStrategies has the most Bitcoins, and then even Tesla's up there at number 5. I find that fascinating. So I imagine we'll see way more companies holding on their balance sheet. Will they be able to offer them at some point in 2025 as almost like, rather than corporate bond offerings, offering Bitcoin bond offerings? Imagine if like 5% to 7% of corporates started doing that too.
Oh my God, the value would skyrocket if that was the case. And yeah, I definitely can see a world where people are anchoring the value of their company in their holdings of the asset that's, ideally increasing up and to the right. And if that's the case, and you're buying into these businesses today for the future value of what you think their Bitcoin holdings will represent in the future, you're sort of buying futures in that future value of the coin without having to take the risk on the coin and having maybe the ability to offset that risk by the value the company creates beyond their holdings, right? So you get the value of their purse plus the value the business creates, and hopefully that offsets some of the risk, is I think how the market perceives that.
I would imagine it's going to you'll start seeing someone. I mean, if you already have 5 of these, I know it's a little, Michael Sellers, and yours is a little outlier because it's a Bitcoin mining company, a little biased, right? What we say. But Tesla, and then I don't know the other ones in there, but I would imagine you're going to start seeing some hedge funds and some others, if they already do, but you're going to see more where it's not a matter if, it's just the percentage of that holding that you allocate, right?
Yep, I think that's already true with ETFs. You're seeing these different market securities being traded on the back of the asset, right, or the asset class. And I think that's just going to continue. So if it does continue and it continues to expand, then the value's got to expand with it.
Mm-hmm. And I just still don't understand. You can be a Warren Buffett. He doesn't really value. I don't know if he's still alive. I guess he is. Who knows? But anyway, I guess Charlie Munger. He left and went to heaven. I guess right. Yeah. Charlie Munger's no longer with him. But they were very, I guess, the opposite of bullish. 10x bearish on all things Bitcoin. Didn't understand it. He didn't understand technology. You got also JP Morgan, you got Jamie Dimon, some others. But I would imagine if this Bitcoin is really what it is, and I get a little bit from my nephew. He's so into this. It's so fascinating. He's it's, to me, it's sort of, I guess, what like Sailors is, it's a forever coin, right? If it's really what they really believe in it, you never sell it. Isn't that really the fact that it's 21 million, it can't be reproduced,
Yep.
there will not be the pressures of any currency devalued. So it's like, sure, it'll be volatile, go down, but if you either believe it or not.
Yeah.
And so that's what I get. Now, I don't know. I just wish, I could have gotten in earlier in 2013 or wherever. But anyway.
Oh, I think it's absolutely still early. $100,000 per coin looks like a big price tag, but once all these coins are mined over time, we'll start trading in percentage points of those coins, and even having a percentage of an individual coin at that future state will probably be incredibly valuable for you. So I think it's early. You can still get in.
All right, cool. It's not too late today. You can sign up today and get your
That's
Bitcoin.
Right. That's right.
All right. Well, tell us a little more about this how you see the digital infrastructure like as the backbone for all innovation.
Sure. Yeah, we kind of touched on this at the top of the call. I see digital infrastructure, or the way I would define it, is sort of like the rails all these different things we're talking about work on. And so that's everything from servers to telemetry to content delivery networks, and how we buffer things at the edge of each of these different networks. So when we're talking about healthcare, it's everything from patient engagement to the AI and machine learning tools behind scheduling systems that optimize how we distribute our resources. In scheduling's case, we talk a lot about capacity utilization in healthcare. So I may have all these healthcare providers, and I have patients who need to meet with them, but they may be in different places at different times, and I may have all this slack in the system that's not getting utilized, which also means patients aren't being seen, which increases wait times and shittier care outcomes for these folks, right? So some of the digital infrastructure in that case would be machine learning or AI-based algorithms that we use to understand where do we have capacity and how do we match that capacity up with demand in a way that leverages our assets and our resources and helps provide better care outcomes for people who need it.
And that as well, I imagine like NVIDIA and these deep chips and the processing power, is that utilized too with Bitcoin mining? I mean, isn't that there's some add-on with the technologies you're doing to get that as fast as possible computing? And I mean, tell me a little bit of how that overlaps.
Yeah, so AI uses a different type of chip than Bitcoin mining does. And so the relationship between the chips, or at least the hardware between the two spaces, is that there's a theory, and one we believe that can be implemented, that we can leverage the Bitcoin mining assets while the HPC or the AI assets are not using energy consumption. So we can sort of horse trade the energy between the two different load demands is what the Bitcoin world is talking a lot about. On the AI side of things, they have really spiky demand. You can think of it similar to how the energy world or energy markets work. When everyone comes home from work and turns on their lights and kicks on their ovens and starts watching Netflix, that Netflix on button also spins up an AI data center where everyone's watching at the same time, and it needs to be hitting predictive algorithms. And so the use is demand correlated. And then the training of AI models can happen sort of when that demand drops, but there's all this like spiky in between load. That load is really challenging on the grid because the grid needs to be balanced between supply and demand. You can't just like turn shit off and on without really hurting or causing brownouts, blackouts, etc. On the grid management side of things. And that's where Bitcoin, we think, can play a big part in how we balance that energy consumption. When those peaks and valleys scale up, we have the opposite peaks and valleys of the energy consumption on the Bitcoin side.
So are you also in the hardware business too? Would you do like I mean, I know these big data centers are usually owned by like, I imagine like the Googles of the world, but are you guys in that as well as part of your offering or not? Or other companies, if not you, but other companies in this space?
The answer is yes, and I suppose. At Mara, we absolutely have a division of the company called Mara Tech that's working on chips and hardware in terms of both ASIC chips as well as cooling technologies. We have a really cool technology we're deploying now called 2PIC, which you can learn about on the Mara website, which helps us keep a constant temperature on the hardware so that we extend the lifetime of the hardware and can run the hardware to its full capacity, which helps us produce more Bitcoin at a lower energy consumption, basically. So we absolutely have a hardware team that is focused on innovating in that space because it helps us do more of what we're great at. I know NVIDIA has their own data centers and their own software and hardware teams that market those things to end consumers. But there are also wholesale data centers out there where people who own racks and cooling systems and buildings and hardware offer that up as a sort of SaaS type experience where if you're a small company that can't run your own data center, you can lean into those companies that offer wholesale solutions. So Google has their own data centers, but they offer that. And then there are non-Google size names that do the same thing.
Cool.
So yeah, there's this whole cottage industry of hardware running big data centers that are running the products that we're probably sitting on top of right now to do this interview.
I love it. Well, let's move over to like AI use cases transforming like both of these sectors. You want to should we start with AI in healthcare? I know we've talked a little bit about that, but you want to dive into that?
Sure. AI is obviously like super sexy these days, but AI in healthcare specifically has been around quite some time. We called it probably machine learning at the time. But the algorithms have been doing things in healthcare for a while, like diagnosing diseases earlier and more accurately. An example of how I've seen that come to life is my father-in-law is a radiologist. Radiologists typically used to have to look at x-rays and such and figure out what may or may not be going on with the individual case that they're looking at. That is all augmented by AI now, and really started probably 5 or 6 years ago in earnest. So the AI will do an initial read, highlight things in an x-ray, for example, that the then radiologist double checks and then does their own check. And that helps them find things that they may have otherwise missed. There's a really cool company in London that I love called Astron Health that's coming to market. They do precision oncology and they use AI to determine, based on somebody's specific case, what off-label use cases of drugs can be used to treat them specifically. This is cancer treatment that is personalized by AI, searching for specific drugs that can be combined to attack a person's specific problem.
Was that the clinician or doctor that had a rare condition, cancer, and then is that the gentleman I see? That's someone else. Okay.
No, right. Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Okay.
AI on the climate tech side, or just like energy side of things, let's call it, has been around for some time, optimizing energy consumption. There's things like smart grid technologies that balance demand in real time, or at least try to balance demand in real time by predicting what loads may be coming online and what type of energy consumption may be required in any given period. There's a whole world of virtual power plants coming online today and are online today. There's a really cool company called Renew Home that spun out of Google and paired up with a company called Home Connect that's been around for some time, that's basically turning a bunch of residential homes and maybe some C&I into what we're calling virtual power plants. So think of distributed systems that allow us to understand load at all these individual nodes and manage the load consumption across the network, that are heavily leaning into AI and machine learning technologies. But beyond, optimizing load or consumption or let's call it diagnoses in healthcare, there's all the like really unsexy stuff, like I said, like scheduling and resource allocation, coming up with personalized communication or care plans or care navigation use cases in healthcare. There's a lot of really fun, cool stuff going on that's been going on for a long time, even before ChatGPT was cool.
Yeah, and then that's even in the deeper weeds, like anything with marketing, finance, all those like that things that make a business run, legal, compliance. Oh my gosh,
Absolutely.
AI is going to be all those things. Well, let's get into a little bit about yourself, kind of in what you're seeing with the innovation trends and kind of the role of product leadership. Obviously, you're from the product, and you have a lot of insight there. That'd be interesting to hear about that.
Sure. I've spent man, it feels, I guess I have a gray beard now. I've been doing product for 20 something years, probably 25 years at this point. So I've been sitting at the intersection of sort of vision, strategy, and execution. I get to work cross-functionally with a lot of folks between tech, design, marketing, business strategy, and finance to understand where should we play and how do we think we can win in that space, and then produce the thing to deliver the value we're trying to create for the end user. Over the last year, I've been operating as a fractional product leader, which is sort of newish school way of saying like part-time contract product leadership. And what I'm doing is really helping companies glean those insights with the vision, strategy, and execution. Where should we play? How can we win? What should we deliver to do that without having the full tilt cost of somebody to be on payroll? That's especially important, I think, in healthcare and climate, where the stakes are just really high. The sales cycles are really, really long. And so having somebody like me on payroll that's, at least a $350K base salary before you have benefits and all the incentives on top of that is a huge drain on early stage companies. But for early stage companies to be able to get to play in these spaces that have such high costs and high sales cycles, but require real deep thinking, people like me who can do that in a part-time way at a much lower clip for them really serve a need, I think, in the market. So that's what I've been up to. I'm lucky to, at the same time, work in the crypto blockchain world and the healthcare world and the climate world by way of the crypto world and some of my other sub-clients in that space. So it's been fun to sit at this intersection that I care so deeply about. And it feels like I'm constantly working on the future. My friends have no idea what I'm talking about half the time.
So what is the future of this digital infrastructure, this digital world that you're on? You paint it right now. It's your canvas.
It's my canvas. I guess I would frame the future in what I believe, which is I think decentralized systems are the way. I think decentralized systems allow us opportunity for personalized ownership, or maybe equitable ownership of our digital assets, or like our identity or our records, whether that's healthcare data or it's energy data, consumption data. I think the world of decentralized technologies ensure a ton of resiliency and efficiency. And that's where I see blockchain and things like things like crypto playing a critical role in digital infrastructure. I also think the thing that will never go away is collaboration. So startups working with large institutions is one way to think about that. I also think that the people problems are the hardest things to solve. We've got a lot of folks in leadership that have been there for a long time and know the world a certain way, but the world has evolved fast. And there are new things that can be put into play that they maybe just don't understand and maybe don't even want to understand. And, when you talk about Buffett and Munger not being crypto enthusiasts, the way I perceive that is, there's this whole new asset class that they haven't spent their entire lifetime earning. And if that asset class wins or even takes a huge market share of the current asset class that they own, a large majority of their lunch just got eaten. So they're going to do everything they can to make sure that that's not true. Or that's the story I tell myself anyway.
Yeah, well, that's what I think. If they're that loud and adamant against it, I don't know. It makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to wrap it up saying, decentralization of all of these things allows us a number of new ways of doing things, and it gives us a lot of resiliency, access, and control that isn't currently the case. And the last example I'll create here for us is your healthcare record is owned by probably Epic or Cerner, maybe some of the smaller EHRs. But for you to get your own healthcare records out of the system is really, really difficult. Imagine a world where you owned your own healthcare record and you could choose when and who at the health systems had access to that so that they could provide you with the best care. There's all kinds of interesting new tech. Like there's a protocol called Noster that's starting in the social space. So think your Twitter profile today is owned by Twitter. If Twitter X. If X decides to shut down your Twitter profile, you lose your entire history of everything you've ever done on X. Nostr essentially gives you the chance to own your social profile, and it allows other companies to build applications on top of the protocol and lean into showing and surfacing your information on their tools. But you ultimately own that profile. It's stored on the blockchain. The history is there forever. No one can take that away from you. I think those are the types of things we want to see in healthcare come into market. And I think that's going to be what we'll see in the next, call it 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I've had many healthcare advocates on, very vocal, very, very informed on processes and how to do it. And one of the shows that we had, they referred to it not as a medical record, it's a billing record, because a lot of times, you know, when you look at it, if you get it, it's just crap. I mean, I hope this will accelerate.
Those systems were built to be transactional at the beginning, and the DNA of the EHR is transactional healthcare records to drive billing use cases, and then there's all kinds of stuff that's been built on top of it since then. But they have that.
It's not even like at the premise is it's not even personalized. It's not even your medical record. I think the future of healthcare will be more engaged and directed by the consumer, i.e. the patient, because if you told me that this was my medical record, I would argue full on out. And a lot of the stuff is just downright wrong. And in order to get that expunged or corrected is like an act of Congress. Because I think there's so much for opportunity, in that space to better have a holistic functional health. I mean, from the get-go, it's almost useless. I mean, I hate to say it, only for the ICD, the coders and whatnot. So, I feel really strongly on that point, because I'm a consumer, I'm a patient, and I rarely find much value other than frustration and lack of clarification on medical records. I mean, it just, anyway, we're here. We hope that it will only get, well, I don't know. I won't want to say it can only get better. I hope so.
We hope it gets better.
That's I'm trying to tell us a little. I mean, you have, a little bit, you've been sharing a little bit, but give us a little more on like this building of impact, your personal philosophy, love to hear a little bit of that.
Yeah. I love to work on stuff that helps people at the end of the day. I've spent my entire career focused on building software that helps other people. I guess I've always been driven by the idea that anything I even spend my time on should multiply impact. I remember quitting my first, what I called big boy job, after coming home from being a wannabe rock star in a touring rock band in my 20s. And I took what I called a big boy job as a marketing director for a wealth management firm. And I was wearing a 3-piece suit, driving a BMW within 6 months of taking the job. And I'm like, man, if I'm just doing this to chase a paycheck for the rest of my life, this is not me or the way. What can I do to work to create an impact on other folks? And so that's how I got into software. So I want to do things where I'm not just solving one problem, but empowering others to solve their problems. I want to create things that create things. It's something I say often. If you're on any of my teams, you probably hear that to the point of being sick of hearing that. But I essentially want to spend time on making little flywheels that keep producing returns as they evolve. And when they go out into the world, hopefully they can continue and have their own life. And that may come from the root or the first experience of mine with creating music with people that were so friggin' talented, and we got to make songs that we got to bring to market that hopefully somebody wanted to interact with, and maybe buy a t-shirt so we could afford to keep making songs that somebody hopefully wants to interact with and is inspired by to start their own band. And I think of business and software and technology is really the same thing. It's just a different expression of the ability to create something that hopefully creates value for somebody that they can exchange some value back for to keep it going.
Sounds like Bitcoin mining too, right?
Yeah, there's so many analogies there, man.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, I love the creating software that helps people on the planet. That's you, man.
It's what I'm trying to spend all my time on.
And this call to action for innovators.
Call to action for innovators. All right. Man, we are living in a world where technology can solve really big challenges. Probably, I don't know if I can say all of our biggest challenges. People challenges are still there. But I want to see a world where the brightest minds are attacking problems that expand our abundance versus selling more trash on the internet. Like I don't want to see more e-commerce companies selling more crappy products that end up in a landfill. I want to see people who are building those things think about, how do we solve problems that drive our abundance or expand our abundance? Let's stop selling trash on the internet. That's my call to action.
That's fair. I like that. Well, this has been great having you on, Chris. Really glad I was able to meet you in person, and now we've been able to follow up, have a deeper conversation. I am just getting started too on this. I feel like there's some similar circles, and that's why you came on today.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to do. What are you up to this year coming up, 2025? Is there some exciting conferences you're attending? Any things that you feel are going to help you kind of stay full and get hungry and get excited?
Yes.
Any sort of initiatives?
Yes. Good question. At Marathon, we're like, I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about these things or not yet, but there's a lot of stuff we're doing in the AI data center, Bitcoin mining space that I'm very, very hungry and eager to solve the problems we're looking at. And that will be probably the bulk of my time and attention for 2025. The other clients that I have and the fund that I'm working with will keep me connected to some really interesting stuff in healthcare. One of the things I've been supporting is a company called Acolyte Health and a company called Scale Health in bringing a patient engagement campaign to market using NFL players to drive awareness and action around health risk assessments and scheduling wellness visits. So we'll be talking more about that at the Vive conference, which I hope to see you at in person.
I'll be there. Yeah.
Our next chance to hang out in IRL in Nashville.
So
see you in February. And then I've got a little group called Advisory Collective, which is a bunch of other fractional executives working like I am, former COOs, CEOs, CROs. We're meeting oftentimes regularly and sharing clients together. And so imagine that will be the rest of my time.
Cool. No, that's great. Definitely. It sounds good. Yeah. I look forward to seeing you at Vive. I'm just getting ready Thanksgiving, getting more ready for, but in the next, I would say the next few weeks, trying to get ready, just for Vive. I know it's not till February, but just sort of starting to think, I feel like these conferences are really, they're only as good as you have your mission and focus, if you would. Like, it's almost like, what is your focus there? And I obviously want to be a little open too, because you could miss it if you're too hyper focused. So yeah.
Well, as you plan for Vive, let me know. I'd love to collaborate on what you're planning to do while you're out. See who I can help connect.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. And I'd love to have you on later if we could release a little more with what you got going with Marathon. I think that could be some interesting things, because I want to get more. I'm hoping this year as well, 2025, to get a little more involved with energy and kind of Bitcoin, crypto. And it's still health. I mean, it's planetary health first, Mars next. And that was a big lofty thing, because I'm trying to put a lot of things in there, but they're all connected. And that's why I had you on today. There's no pun intended.
People on the planet, man. That's the foundation for everything else.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chris, you're here not for long. We're wrapping it up. Anything you would like to let people know about you that you haven't, how to connect with you, anything while we're still here?
I don't think so. I think what I want to end with is just gratitude for you having me here. I appreciate you making time for me and letting me share my perspective about all these wacky things I love to spend time on that I think are important. And I love that you and I are so aligned on what those things are. So thanks for the time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's been great. And I know this isn't the first or the last. And this is just the flywheels of flywheels. So
I love it. Step
anyway,
one.
yeah, and I'm really pumped knowing that you're going to Vive, because that's anything too far out you can't get excited about. Well, yeah, you can, I guess, but anyway, it's close enough around the corner. So we're gonna call it a day, and this has been awesome having you on. What I will do also is once I post this out, I'll put it out, probably just put it out tomorrow, maybe on Wednesday, and then we'll get the newsletter out probably next week. So what I would suggest, the newsletter corresponds with this. If there's any sort of links that you'd like to share, any sort of stuff that's appropriate, be thinking about it and get that over to me, and I'll put that. That's on my Substack handle. That's growing every day. Surprisingly, it's amazing, the network effect on Substack. I've been impressed with that. So that's where I hold all our podcasts. It's a pretty good place to do that.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the opportunity to share more. Happy to share all my social handles and all that. Anyone who wants to reach out, I'm totally an open book. I love connecting other people to my network as well. So feel free to reach out to me through those links. And I'll share some of the more publicly available data on what Mara is up to, because it's really, really impressive.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right. Well, until next time, friends.